Welcome back to your mental journey guide. Today, we're diving into something that touches almost all of us at some point: perfectionism. You know that feeling when you've rewritten an email 5 times, or when you avoid starting a project because you're worried it won't be good enough? That's perfectionism talking. And here's the thing, it's not actually helping you create better work, it's keeping you stuck. Today, we're going to explore what perfectionism really is, why it shows up in our lives, and most importantly, how you can work with it instead of against it. First, we'll unpack the theory behind perfectionism. Then, I'll share some real-world examples you'll probably recognize. And finally, we'll get practical with strategies you can use starting today to break free from the perfectionist trap. So, grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and let's begin this journey together. Let's start with something that might surprise you. If you're a perfectionist, you're not broken, you're not flawed, you're human. And understanding this is the first key to unlocking why perfectionism has such a grip on so many of us. Perfectionism often comes from a deeply human desire to excel and create meaning in what we do. It's our attempt to bring significance to our work and our lives. Think about it this way. When you were growing up, you probably learned that doing well meant getting approval, love, or safety. Your brain, trying to protect you, developed this strategy. If I do everything perfectly, I'll be safe, I'll be loved, I'll be accepted. But here's what's fascinating about this protective mechanism. Perfectionism is also our attempt to control an uncertain world. When everything feels chaotic or unpredictable, perfectionism whispers, "At least you can control this one thing. Make it perfect." Now, you might be wondering, if perfectionism is trying to help me, why does it feel so painful? Well, that brings us to what I call the perfect trap. Here's where things get interesting and maybe a little uncomfortable. Perfectionism often traps us in what I call the must-do cycle. Everything must be perfect. Every email must be flawless. Every presentation must be outstanding. And when we get caught in this cycle, we actually achieve less, not more. This happens because perfectionism disconnects us from our real values. Instead of asking, "What matters most to me here?" we ask, "How can I make this perfect?" We lose sight of what we actually care about. But what's really driving this trap? What's underneath all that need for perfection? The answer might surprise you. The perfect trap is driven by fear. Fear of being judged, fear of failing, fear of not being good enough. And when we're operating from fear, we're not operating from our best selves. Let me break this down into the 4 main fears that fuel perfectionism. First, there's the fear of vulnerability. We avoid situations where we might feel exposed or uncertain. Second, there's the fear of judgment. We worry constantly about what others will think if something isn't perfect. Third, there's the fear of failure. We're terrified of making mistakes and facing the consequences. And fourth, there's the fear of not being good enough. This creates a constant drive to prove ourselves. These fears keep us small. They keep us from taking risks, from being creative, from being authentically ourselves. But before you start thinking you need to eliminate these fears, let me share something important about the difference between perfectionism and something else entirely. Now, you might be thinking, "But I want to do good work. I want to excel." And that's wonderful. But there's a crucial difference between striving for excellence and being trapped by perfectionism. Understanding this difference can be life-changing. Excellence is values-driven. It comes from wanting to create something meaningful. Perfectionism is fear-driven. It comes from wanting to avoid pain or judgment. Excellence is flexible. It allows for learning and adaptation. Perfectionism is rigid. It demands flawlessness. Here's another key difference. Excellence focuses on the process. It values learning, growth, and improvement. Perfectionism obsesses over the product. It only cares about the end result. Sometimes what we call perfectionism is actually a sneaky form of avoidance. Let me explain what I mean. Perfectionism is often a sophisticated avoidance strategy. When we set impossibly high standards, we create a perfect excuse not to start. I can't begin until I know exactly how to do this perfectly. And so we delay, we procrastinate, we get stuck in analysis paralysis. We use perfectionism to avoid uncomfortable feelings like uncertainty, frustration, or disappointment. But by avoiding these feelings, we also avoid growth, progress, and fulfillment. It's like we're stuck in a prison of our own making. And this avoidance doesn't just affect what we do, it affects how we see ourselves. It makes our self-worth dependent on external validation. Instead of knowing I am valuable because I am human, we believe I am valuable because I perform well. This creates an inner critic that's never satisfied. No matter what we achieve, it finds fault. It moves the goalposts. It tells us we're not doing enough, not being enough. This voice becomes so familiar that we might not even notice it anymore. But it's there, constantly judging, constantly pushing. And this doesn't just stay internal, it spills over into our relationships too. When we're afraid of not being perfect, we hide our vulnerabilities, we put on masks, we lose our spontaneity and authenticity. We might also project our perfectionistic standards onto others, creating unrealistic expectations that strain our connections. We become harder to be around because we're always on, always performing, never just being. But here's the ultimate irony of perfectionism. The more we try to control everything, the more out of control we actually feel. We exhaust ourselves trying to manage the unmanageable. We create more stress, not less. The key is learning to accept uncertainty. When we can be okay with not knowing, not controlling, not being perfect, we actually gain more freedom and flexibility. But how do we get there? How do we move from self-criticism to self-acceptance? Self-compassion is the antidote to perfectionism. It means treating yourself with the same kindness you'd show a good friend. It means recognizing that suffering and imperfection are part of being human. It means being mindful of difficult emotions without being overwhelmed by them. When we practice self-compassion, we create space for growth, learning, and authentic connection. We give ourselves permission to be human, to make mistakes, to learn as we go. But self-compassion alone isn't enough. We need something to guide us forward. We need a compass. Instead of perfectionism, we can use our values as our guide. Values are what matter most to us deep down. They're not about external approval or avoiding pain. They're about creating meaning and purpose. When we act from our values, we can move forward even when perfectionism shows up. We can take imperfect action because we know it's aligned with what truly matters to us. Our values become our North Star, guiding us through the fog of perfectionist thinking. And this leads us to a fundamental shift in how we approach our work and our lives. Finally, let's talk about shifting from product focus to process focus. Instead of obsessing over the end result, we can appreciate the journey. We can value the learning, the growth, the experience itself. This doesn't mean we don't care about outcomes. It means we hold them lightly. We focus on what we can control, our effort, our presence, our values, rather than what we can't control, the final result. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds great in theory, but what does it actually look like in real life? Well, let me share some stories that might feel very familiar. Real scenarios that show how perfectionism plays out in everyday life. As I share these, notice if any of them resonate with your own experience. Meet Emily, a marketing professional. She spends hours perfecting every email, every presentation, every report. She stays late at work regularly, not because she has too much to do, but because nothing ever feels quite good enough. She's exhausted, and ironically, her work isn't actually better than her colleagues who spend half the time she does. Emily's perfectionism is masquerading as dedication, but it's actually stealing her energy and joy. Then there's Marcus, a freelance graphic designer. He's incredibly talented, but he struggles to show his work to clients until it's absolutely perfect. This means he often misses deadlines, loses clients, and earns less money. His perfectionism, meant to protect his reputation, is actually damaging it. Marcus is stuck in the very trap we talked about earlier, using perfectionism to avoid the discomfort of being judged, but creating even more problems in the process. Let me tell you about Elena, a student who procrastinates on assignments because she's afraid they won't be perfect. She'll research for weeks, plan extensively, but struggle to actually write. When she finally starts, she's under so much pressure that her work suffers. She's caught in a cycle where her fear of imperfection creates the very imperfection she's trying to avoid. Elena's story shows us how perfectionism can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And here's David, a father who wants to be the perfect parent. He researches every parenting decision extensively, worries constantly about making mistakes, and ends up so anxious that he's less present with his children. His perfectionism is preventing him from enjoying the very relationship he's trying to perfect. David's story reminds us that perfectionism can rob us of the joy in the things we care about most. These examples show us something important. Perfectionism often creates the very problems it's trying to solve. It promises protection but delivers paralysis. It promises excellence but delivers exhaustion. But here's the good news. There's another way, and that's exactly what we're going to explore next. Now comes the part you've been waiting for. How do you actually work with perfectionism in your daily life? How do you move from understanding to action? Let me walk you through a practical roadmap that you can start using today. The first step is awareness, and this might be harder than you think. Perfectionism is often so familiar that it feels normal, so we need to become detectives of our own experience. Start noticing when perfectionism shows up. Pay attention to your body. Do your shoulders tense up? Does your breathing get shallow? Does your stomach tighten? Your body often knows before your mind does. Notice your thoughts. Are you telling yourself, "This has to be perfect," or "I can't make any mistakes"? Are you spending way more time on something than it actually needs? Are you avoiding starting because you don't know how to do it perfectly? Here's the key. Don't try to fight these thoughts or feelings. Instead, acknowledge them. You might say to yourself, "I notice I'm having perfectionist thoughts right now. That's okay. My brain is trying to protect me." Try this exercise. Give your inner critic a name. Maybe call it the perfectionist or the critic, or even something playful like Fred. This creates distance between you and those thoughts. You're not a perfectionist. You're a person who sometimes has perfectionist thoughts. Big difference. But recognition is just the first step. When perfectionism kicks in, your stress response activates, and that makes everything harder. When perfectionism kicks in, your stress response activates. Your brain shifts into survival mode, making it harder to think clearly and creatively. So we need to calm your nervous system first. Think of this as pressing the reset button on your brain. Try this simple breathing exercise. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4, breathe out for 6. Do this 3 times. The longer exhale activates your parasympathetic nervous system, helping you relax. It's like giving your brain a gentle massage. Or try a quick body scan. Start at the top of your head and slowly move your attention down through your body. Notice any tension and breathe into those areas. This helps you reconnect with your body and step out of the mental spiral. Movement helps too. Stand up, stretch, take a short walk. Physical activity can interrupt the stress cycle and help you think more clearly. Even just shaking your hands and feet for 30 seconds can make a difference. Once you've calmed your nervous system, you can access your thinking brain again, and that's when you can ask yourself the most important question. What really matters to me here? Is it about impressing others, or is it about creating something meaningful? Is it about avoiding criticism, or is it about contributing to something you care about? Let's say you're writing a report. Instead of asking, "How can I make this perfect?" ask, "How can I make this useful? How can I serve my readers? How can I contribute to my team's goals?" Notice how different those questions feel. One creates pressure, the other creates purpose. Your values become your compass. Even when perfectionism is screaming at you, you can take action aligned with what matters most to you. This is how you reclaim your power from perfectionism. But knowing your values isn't enough. You have to act on them, even when it's scary. The fourth step is where the real work happens and where most people get stuck. We need to practice taking action before we feel ready. We need to build our tolerance for imperfection like a muscle. Start small. Set a timer for 25 minutes and work on something, knowing it won't be perfect. Send the email after one review instead of 5. Share your work when it's good enough rather than perfect. Choose low-stakes situations to practice. Maybe it's a casual text message, a social media post, or a simple task at work. The goal is to build your tolerance for imperfection. Each time you take imperfect action, you're proving to yourself that you can handle it. You're showing your brain that imperfection isn't dangerous. Remember, done is better than perfect. A completed, imperfect project is infinitely more valuable than a perfect project that never gets finished. This isn't about lowering your standards, it's about raising your willingness to be human. And when you do take imperfect action, something important happens. You get to practice the most crucial skill of all. Step 5 is about observing yourself without judgment and practice self-compassion. When you do take imperfect action, notice what happens. What thoughts come up? What emotions do you feel? What sensations do you notice in your body? Just observe without labeling anything as good or bad. Be a curious scientist studying your own experience. If you make a mistake, or if something doesn't go as planned, this is your opportunity to practice self-compassion. Place your hand on your heart and speak to yourself like you would to a dear friend. This is hard. It's okay to feel disappointed. Everyone makes mistakes. I'm still learning and growing. Self-compassion isn't about lowering your standards. It's about treating yourself with kindness while you pursue what matters to you. It's about being your own best friend rather than your own worst critic. And here's something important to understand about how your brain works under pressure. When you're stressed, your brain's prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning and decision-making, doesn't function as well. Your amygdala, the fear center, takes over. This is why perfectionism often leads to poor decisions and creative blocks. When you notice stress building, take a moment to ground yourself. Feel your feet on the floor. Name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch. This brings you back to the present moment and helps your thinking brain come back online. Understanding this helps you be more patient with yourself. When you're in perfectionist mode, you're not thinking clearly. That's not your fault. It's just how brains work. Here's how to make this real in your daily life. Start each day by identifying one thing you can do imperfectly. Maybe it's writing a first draft, having a difficult conversation, or trying something new. Commit to taking action even if it's not perfect. End each day by reflecting on what you learned, not just what you accomplished. What did you discover about yourself? What would you do differently next time? How did you show up for your values? Remember, this is a practice. You're not trying to eliminate perfectionism completely. You're learning to work with it differently. Some days will be easier than others, and that's perfectly okay. The goal isn't to become perfect at being imperfect. The goal is to become more flexible, more compassionate, and more aligned with what truly matters to you. As we wrap up today's episode, I want you to take a deep breath. Just pause for a moment and let everything we've discussed settle in. Perfectionism has probably served you in some ways. It's helped you achieve things, meet expectations, and avoid certain kinds of pain. But it's also limited you. It's kept you playing small, avoiding risks, and hiding your authentic self. Today, you've taken the first step toward a different relationship with perfectionism. You've learned to see it as a protective strategy rather than a character flaw. You've discovered the difference between excellence and perfectionism, and you've gained practical tools to move forward with your values as your guide. I'm proud of you for being here, for listening, for being willing to explore this topic. That takes courage. That takes vulnerability. That takes the kind of authenticity that perfectionism often tries to hide. Your mental journey is unique, and it's unfolding exactly as it should. Trust the process. Be patient with yourself. And remember, progress is more important than perfection. Here's what I want you to do after this episode ends. Choose one small thing you can do imperfectly today. Maybe it's sending that email you've been overthinking, starting that project you've been avoiding, or having that conversation you've been putting off. Take one small, imperfect step in the direction of what matters to you. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might benefit. Leave a comment if you feel moved to do so. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming episodes where we'll continue exploring the beautiful, messy, imperfect journey of being human. This is your mental journey guide. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.